And welcome back to Dollars and Dragons. Today I have with me DragnaCarta if you'd like to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, hello, and thank you so much for having me. I'm DragnaCarta. My friends call me Dragna. I am the author of Curse of Strahd Reloaded. It's one of several guides to running Curse of Strahd. There are a number of other excellent ones, but this one is mine. I'm very happy with it. I recently finished it, which I'm also very happy with. I have worked on a number of other things, most notably recently. I mean, generally speaking, I run a Patreon where people support me for Curse of Strahd Reloaded and my other work. But most recently, I'm also the proud founder and lead writer at Eidolon Publishing, a TTRPG publishing company that continues the work that Curse of Strahd Reloaded started, which is revising, expanding upon, and providing guidance to dungeon masters running official Wizards of the Coast modules to help improve them, make their prep lives easier, enrich in the narrative experience, and improve the gameplay for the players. And so that's been a very large focus of mine. We've recently launched and very excited to see what our team's going to accomplish with our first projects. Beyond that, I've also was the developer of, technically am the developer, given that it's still in progress, but there's currently an active version out there of what I call Challenge Ratings 2.0. It's a mathematical encounter building system for D&D that I developed after getting far too frustrated with running too many unbalanced encounters, in which I, with the help of a few web developer friends, far more qualified than I, turned it into a website called challengerated.com, which helps mathematically balance your encounters in terms of figuring out how tough they'll actually be. And I was also the director and dungeon master of the now completed Curse of Strahd actual play, Curse of Strahd, Twice Bitten, which I ran using a number of other Curse of Strahd DMs as my players. They did an absolutely fantastic job, and I'm really proud of the story that we told. So, I'm sure there's probably something I'm forgetting. I am a jack of many trades, and I am an incorrigible diver of rabbit holes. But nevertheless, as you might have guessed, I'm very good at soapboxing and talking for a long time, so I will turn the mic back over.
Yeah, you are. And you almost went into the Uwu Strahd. You almost went into Thwad.
Oh, boy.
I have to ask you, though, your background before getting into DMing online and things like that. Do you come from an academic background, or what was your career before all of this?
Sure. So, I mean, technically, I still do all of this part-time. I've got a full-time 9 to 5. Without going into too much depth, generally my education was on the humanities side. Took some coursework in writing, although I dabbled a little bit in some other scientific fields, a little bit of computer science, but largely in the course of writing, and kind of kept to that kind of field in the workforce. I think for me, I mean, I've been DMing since I was a kid, since probably around 2007 is what I tend to remember with 4th edition. And it was just on and off for years. And then, at some point in 2016, I pick up Curse of Strahd. I find the Curse of Strahd subreddit, and I'm like, hey, lots of people are sharing their thoughts here. Maybe I should do that. And it was all over for me after that.
Yeah, once you could actually make some posts and really focus in on sharing that information. And the internet was so different back then too. Even 10 years ago, I feel like Reddit was a lot more friendly. Is that
Reddit.
right?
Well, maybe relatively speaking, I don't think Reddit's ever been friendly, and I say this as someone who's an incorrigible redditor. But
Right. Maybe that's just my own
I love you,
perception of
Reddit.
it. But...
It's not personal.
um, but yeah, I feel like that's a good introduction. I think, especially to creating.
Yeah.
Did you do any
And
sort of? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like generally speaking, Reddit's got a reputation, but the Curse of Strahd community in general, you could not have asked for a better place to be a DM looking to start sharing their work, getting feedback, working with other people. The Discord server that the community built, just a fantastic place. So, I mean, it was hard not to start working on things and sharing them in that kind of space.
Yeah, I wonder on some level if it's a chicken or the egg thing for me when I look on YouTube, like when I first started GMing and I was looking for advice and figuring out how to do this and that. I would also search Reddit, and one of the first things that I started before I even started to GM the first time was advice on Curse of Strahd and Curse of Strahd Reloaded and things like that. I didn't start GMing until 2020, so I'm relatively new to all of this, but I do find it's fascinating with the amount of impact that a campaign has on the 5e scene. Now that I'm a professional, I see how many campaigns are being run of each different Wizards module, right? And Curse of Strahd is by far the most popular, like by and large. And if we look back on like the fact that it has had 2 or 3 iterations, it's obviously a fan favorite for a reason, and like it evokes a lot of our media, and gothic horror is kind of a staple in our media in America. Um, so I wonder, like, how much, all of that to say, I wonder how much of the groundswell of community support is one of the reasons why it's the most run module out of all the others. I have to imagine it has a huge impact.
So I think it's chicken and egg for sure. I think that for me, the kind of open-ended nature of Curse of Strahd, certainly kind of the sandboxy nature, the way that it kind of fleshes out the world but leaves a lot for the DM to create, almost perversely does force the community to build around it. But with
Yeah.
that said, if you compare to something like Storm King's Thunder, like which leaves a lot to build in but doesn't give you something to like grab onto, right? It's like a coral reef can't grow on nothing. You need to give them some sort of structure. And Curse of Strahd, for better or for worse, does give some kind of structure that DMs can grab on and then fill in, although it leaves a lot of gaps and a lot of things to be said. But I think even more so than that, because the question becomes, maybe it's easy to build on, but what draws people to that place in the first place? And certainly the long history doesn't hurt. You've got a dedicated fan base going back to I6, the original Ravenloft. You've got Strahd himself. He's a larger than life villain. On top of that, people love villains. It's a phrase that I like saying in my Patreon server. Stories are about people, not plots. Curse of Strahd, unlike almost every other Wizards module, is about a person. It's about Strahd, and to another extent, Irina and the other characters of Barovia. Storm King Thunder, that's just about, oh, save the world. Great. But
Right.
like, who do I care about? Curse of Strahd is about Strahd. He's the guy on the cover. He's the name in the title. It's a person, not a plot. But even beyond that, and I think that accounts for a large part of the popularity, to be sure. Curse of Strahd, as you said, is a gothic horror module. And if you flash back a little bit to something like Rime of the Frost Maiden, right? As that was coming out, and especially as they pitched the trailers, certainly I was very excited about it for a primary single reason, which is I was like, oh my god, this is going to be the Arctic cosmic horror module, and I'm so pumped to run it. And then it came out, and aside from like a few minor scenes, it was generally just more generic Faerun schlop with snow on top. It was just Sword Coast on ice, which like some people like. I don't begrudge them that, but Storm King's Thunder is Sword Coast in mountains. Lost Might of Phandelver is Sword Coast but in caves. There are lots of Sword Coast but in X places, and
Mm-hmm.
at least for me, and for at least for a few other people I know, a lot of the interest went away when Rime of the Frost Maiden was revealed to just be Sword Coast on ice. Your generic fantasy medieval, and again, I love the genre stuff. There's a reason I played D&D, but Curse of Strahd, almost in a way similar to Tomb of Annihilation, I would argue, and what Descent into Avernus is trying to do, although because of the major issues with its plotting and gameplay, which we can talk about on a separate occasion, fails. Is that Curse of Strahd is gothic horror. It has a theme. It has a genre. It does not just go into the pot and get stirred up with all the generic swords and sorcery fantasy pot. It stands alone. So if you think, oh, I want gothic horror, you go to Curse of Strahd. If you think, oh, I want swords and sorcery with dragons, you're like, I guess I could do one of these 6 different Wizards modules, or I could just homebrew it, and generally everyone homebrews it anyway, because everyone knows how to homebrew your own generic fantasy adventure and world. But Curse of Strahd is definitive. It is the gothic horror world, at least for Dungeons and Dragons. So, as conversely, where a homebrewer might just say, I'll just run my own medieval setting. Anybody who wants to run gothic horror, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, oh, I'll just run Curse of Strahd. It's right there.
Yeah, Rime of the Frost Maiden, which I admit is my favorite campaign module.
Oh,
Despite me running so
I've
much
been too
Strahd.
aggressive, alas.
But no, your criticisms of it, I think, are valid because of the way that the team was structured. I feel like individually,
And sorry, to be clear, I don't think it is a bad module because it lacks a distinct genre. I just think that in terms of market appeal,
Right.
It's less distinctive. I think that if it
Okay,
were
yeah.
more stronger on the cosmic side, you'd get a lot of Call of Cthulhu players, for example, saying, "I want to play Rime of
Right.
the Frost Maiden" instead of playing Call of Cthulhu.
No, absolutely. No, I agree. My statement was to agree with you. So,
Oh, sure,
um,
sorry.
I don't, you're interrupting me to agree with you, but silly. But I was gonna say the way that I've run Rime of the Frost Maiden was to lean on survival horror or cosmic horror, like The Thing, and those sort of vibes, because it really can break down as far as how you keep people on track to be invested in what's going on when it is just like a snowy kind of dangerous, like there's an owl lady who hates you kind of adventure. You got to
Mhm.
kind of, and I always bring the Frost Maiden more into the actual adventure, not directly, but she's more of a force of nature, and there's sightings of her and weird shit that happens with the cult, and a lot of things that I like to overemphasize that are not emphasized at all in the text, like having the cult be an actual antagonist organization that you have to deal with frequently, and the towns have to negotiate with them, and the players can't just go and kill them immediately. That's a bigger use of some of these survival horror tropes and like some of the weirdness that you can really embrace with Rhyme. But in some ways, I think it is very similar to Strahd, and that's actually why I like it. If you run it a certain way, because you're isolated, and it's more about the individual characters and how they survive in this hostile environment. To me,
Oh, 100%. There are a lot of themes that, like, I would love to run a Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign and just rip out its guts and shove in some Eldritch Abominations instead. Like, I would love to do that one day. I think there's a lot of potential there. So I'm not surprised that you found that gold vein and mined it for all it's worth.
it's a lot of fun. I just, yeah, it does struggle in some parts because when I make a decision like that, then there's no reason for me to run the chapter where the dragon blows up all the villages. Like that's not the type of
Yeah.
story I'm trying to run. So like there's some stuff that I just cut because I've made a creative decision to focus on other aspects of it. And the Frost Maiden to be not a centerpiece of the module, I think is a waste.
It's her name's on the cover, and I think
Yeah.
I entirely agree with you. Like, I think it's a major oversight often when people homebrew modules and they kind of put their own spin on them, which is their creative right and drive as dungeon masters. But nevertheless, when you change the primary focus and themes of a module, there's going to be knock-on effects. And some of the random plot threads or side quests maybe don't serve the purpose that you're of the story you're trying to tell or the experience you're trying to create. Like you said, you have to be intentional about what you're doing and not just kind of
Mhm.
keep things there out of inertia. And I think that people could
Yeah.
could be a little, I would encourage them to be more courageous in cutting things rather than trying to keep everything but also put your own spin on it.
I've really enjoyed though running Strahd with all of the different resources because I think that there is, when you're trying to create your particular vision of Barovia and say you're a home GM or you're one that doesn't have as much time or you're just looking for more ideas and how to craft a better story, because there are so many resources, you can really just like hone in on something very specific and unique that you're doing. And I do see some like some themed Strahds that are a little bit different that are kind of fun. Like I've seen Strahd in space. I've seen Castlevania Strahd, which kind of shakes up the whole dynamic of um, the hierarchy within Barovia, and instead it's a ruling class of vampires, as opposed to just a singular vampire. But I think altogether, yeah, it's just a lot of work to rework a core function of the module. Like if you do change Strahd, then like why are you running Barovia? Because um in
Hmm.
some ways like you can make some changes that are still like good. Um but if you fundamentally change Strahd away from being like an autocratic murderer, then it's not the same game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because something that I've really come to learn and appreciate, where maybe I didn't do so before, when I was first set out to start writing Reloaded, especially when I started writing the second edition, which I call Reloaded, which I started in around 2023 or so. The first
Hmm.
edition I started writing in 2017. I largely finished it. started the second edition, complete rewrite and overhaul starting in 2023 called Reloaded. And especially with Reloaded, I did my best to put as much time and effort into it to make it comprehensive, to make it do as much of the prep for you, and to kind of fill in as many of the gaps as possible. And a lot of people like that. Some people didn't, understandably, because they felt like it kind of tied their hands in one way. And so, for the future, especially with Eidolon, I'd like to try to make my work more moddable. But I think what I took from the experience was a lesson that different people come to different modules for different reasons. Some people, as you said, they just have 5 minutes to prep before Monday night D&D, and they don't have the time to do it on their own. Other people they have the time, but they just want something they can grab and go because they'd rather just have fun with their friends and not spend the time on a Sunday sitting at their desk going through world building. But other people, they do it because they have a vision in their minds, and they have an idea of what the end product should feel like, but all the bones need to come from somewhere. And especially when you're building on those bones, like, say, a setting, it can be an incredibly taxing, exhausting experience. Like, I'm running a campaign for Chult right now. It's a heavily modified Tomb of Annihilation. And if I weren't able to rely on the existing lore of Chult, notwithstanding the fact that I'm changing it, it would be a monumental task to build that all from scratch. My players are just passing through Baldur's Gate very briefly to take a ship to Chult. And if I didn't have the Baldur's Gate Gazetteer in Descent into Avernus, I don't know what I would do. It would take forever to just build this one city that my players will be in for 1.5 sessions. So I can definitely empathize with the desire to kind of grab and go, right? To take that skeleton, those bones, but to make sure that the outside feel is your own. The tricky part comes in when attaching all the connective tissue and making sure that you're keeping what works and you're changing what doesn't. And it's tricky to know how that works, especially when you're grabbing things that carry other materials with them. Like, you're grabbing a module like Strahd, and it brings in these assorted side quests and NPCs and histories and relationships. And maybe you change some of them, but not all of them. But now you've got, something like the Ezek Strozny plot in Curse of Strahd is a classic example. People love doing what Chris Perkins did in Dice Camera Action and changing to that Ezek is a sibling of one of their players. And that's great, but because you've changed that, you've now altered this load-bearing pillar that is Vallaki, which is the whole point of Vallaki is the Baron Vlakovich sucks, Ezek Strozny sucks, and you're supposed to kill Ezek and then figure out what happens from there. But if suddenly Ezek is your player's brother, there's no motivation to do that. There is no plot line in Vallaki, and Vargas is just going to stay there forever and kind of suck. And it opens up these character exploration possibilities, but in doing so, you've rendered the entire town redundant.
This might have been taken from, and I have to ask you this question about Reloaded because I haven't referenced, I don't have it open right now, but the way that I run Vallaki now is like kind of a mashup of all these different collections that I made and the things that I found that work for me. But the way that I run Vallaki is you arrive, the bones have been stolen. It's a plot by the Watchers to unseat the Velikovic's by convincing the party to join their side to overthrow them. And then Anastasia, one of the brides of Strahd, is in Vallaki, who is also descended from the Watchers. Aiding and abetting that sort of plot. So we have like multiple motives, and it's a very political style of thing. And Ezek, who's Isabel, and she is the Ancient, how I run it. She's just kind of an authoritative autocrat. She has some weird fetish hangups with like the dolls and stuff, but I don't always run that, depending on like what type of crowd I have and like how I feel about it on the day. But it's more of a political thing, and I was wondering how much of that has been considered for something like Reloaded, because it is very complex to run it like that. But what was your experience in crafting these sort of complex interlinking plots for a place like Vallaki, and what did you learn out of that?
Flashback a few years ago. The core problem of Vallaki is what I like to call, affectionately, I guess you could say, the Vallakian knot. Similar to the Gordian knot, the impossible to solve knot that Alexander the Great was presented with, or similarly the Vallakian slog. Historically, it has been the practice and experience of many DMs to make many of the little fandom tweaks to WotC. When the players get there, they have the plot lines with, maybe there's a tea time with the Baron. Maybe they go to, they have like Fiona Voctor asks them to do something. And a lot of the time, people don't always handle intrigue well, for starters. It is a difficult, or can be a difficult kind of plotline to run. Like you said, it's intricate, and so a DM who doesn't know what they're doing might struggle with that. But I think moreover than that, again and again, what I kept hearing was people spending 4, 5, 10 sessions in WotC, and coming out of it with nothing to show for it. There's this one. There's this one clip from Rick and Morty, I think, where they're like, all right, in and out, 20-minute adventure. And they go in, they come out, they're like, they win the day, they kill the aliens, they come out, they get medals, they sit in the car, close the windows, pause, and then scream for 30 seconds. And that has been, to my understanding, the historic experience of WotC. That was terrible. Why did we do that? Why were we there for so long? Can we please leave? Here's the thing. D&D is a game. You're supposed to have fun playing it, and WotC historically has not been fun because it ties players up in knots. And so when I wrote Reloaded, the second edition of Reloaded, because the first edition really tried to approach it in kind of a similar way that everyone else was doing, where you're kind of fleshing it out, giving character backstories and connections, and trying to explore a little more of what's going on, and trying to build a narrative plotline for WotC, which definitely built more of a cohesive plot than Raw does, where Raw just kind of puts you in there and like maybe 3 things happen in like half a day, and then you're done with WotC. If you run it entirely Raw, which a lot of people miss. But the end result of that was people going, oh my God, it's been 8 sessions. Can we leave, please? So my top priority for WotC in Reloaded was, okay, we're here. We're going to be here for probably a while. There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff we want to touch on. I don't want to leave anything ignored, be it Stella Voctor having her issues, or Viktor Volakovich trying to escape, or Bluto Krogrov and whatever the hell is he's up to, or obviously the Bones Quest, or, the kidnapped Arabelle. And so, while I was sitting through and thinking through the narrative threads, my top priority was, we're here for a reason. What is that reason? And then what I realized was that in Raw, and very often in community fanon, including the original Reloaded, there is no way to win WotC. There is no happy ending. The best you can do is topple Vargas, Volakovich, and then Fiona takes over. And she serves Strahd, so she sucks too. And then you can kill Fiona, but then Vargas stays in place. And if you kill both of them, well, I mean, it's a common trope people to like run elections, I guess, and then like put Erwin or Lucian in power. But like that's not really part of the module. There's no evidence that either of them really wants it. And so like even then, WotC still kind of sucks. Nothing good has really happened. You just like have given one of your friends a fancy title, and you don't really see anything come of it. At best, that is the best case outcome. And so what I did was I thought, okay, WotC needs a happy ending. There needs to be something that the players should strive for, feel proud of, and think, there is a reason why we came here. I can hold on to this. And what I realized was, first, WotC is the hub for the players. It's the center of the valley. They're going to keep coming back to it throughout the campaign. It needs to be a home base. So for starters, WotC at the end of what I call Act 2, which is all the WotC shenanigans, it has to feel safe. It has to feel welcoming and comforting and warm and secure, a place that they can come back to again and again. So there has to be a way to permanently shift the status quo in WotC to be friendly to the players. Given that, well, the module gives us 2 noble houses, 2 leadership options to work with. Now, I could kind of go all in and try to propose some sort of, democracy election thing, maybe give Erwin a claim to the throne, maybe Lucian goes in, but I was like, you know what? We have 2 figures, let's keep it simple. Volakovich or Voctor, one of them's going to rule. Volakovich sucks, not least because he's got Ezek. So I had to change Fiona to make her a far more palatable, if not actively acceptable, candidate for the position, which was anathema to a lot of people at the time that I did it. But my explanation was like, look, one of these 2 is probably going to wind up in power. Your players have to be happy with that. And that doesn't mean you have to compromise the moral ambiguity of Fiona. I've tried my best in Reloaded for the first the player's time in WotC to start to make sure that she's still clear, like, look, Strahd is my liege lord. I'm not personally loyal to him, but he can murder everyone in my town. And I love my people and I want them to live and not suffer, which means that if Strahd demands my fealty, as long as he's not ordering me to like kill my neighbors and torture them, I'm gonna do it. Because it costs very little, and I need to do what's best for my people, even if I find it philosophically unpalatable. I can't afford purity. I have to make the hard decisions. And, I kind of work with that a little bit. I made her a worshiper instead of a devil, which there's no other devils in Barovia. Why are they here? I took a page from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and made her a worshiper of Ezra, the goddess of the mists, and made Ezra a mask of the dark powers, who want everything to stay the same, want everyone to be hopeless and apathetic and despairing. And so Fiona is now a worshiper of Ezra, aka the dark powers, though she doesn't know it. And so she believes, to paraphrase or quote Isaac from a final season of Netflix's Castlevania, originally, that's how they get you. They keep you in one long night, always surviving, and never dream of the sunrise. That's Fiona Wachter in Reloaded. She doesn't believe a better world is popular. Is possible. She has no hope. And so her arc over the course of the campaign is the players winning her faith and trust and teaching her to hope again. But she is still, at core, if the players help her, or at least remove the obstacles to her rising to power in Vallaki, she can turn it into a safe, welcoming place and eventually become an ally of the players and an active friend. So even though they might philosophically disagree with her by the end of their initial time in Vallaki, she is an ally and even potential friend to them, and they know it's a safe place to come back to. They have changed Vallaki for the better. It will no longer suffer Vargas's tyranny. Strahd is not actively calling on Fiona to do anything bad. She's paying him lip service, sure, but she's assured them that she wants what's best for Vallaki, and so they have faith that their friends will not actively suffer at Fiona's hands. So they feel like they've achieved something good for the town. And so everything throughout that, there's the St. Angela's Feast with the bones. There's rescuing Arabelle to help the Vistani. There is obviously the Izek quest. All of it ultimately leading toward creating the Vallaki hub as a home place for the players to come back to throughout the rest of the module, and giving them that real win that they can believe in, that makes their time there worthwhile.
That was really great advice.
Thank you.
For the GMs who are listening. No, I find that's very much a common issue in Strahd when you start tooling with things like we've been talking about. It's hard to figure out like what's the win condition, like because I don't want to necessarily make them feel great. I just want them to feel like, hey, we did it, and feel a little accomplished every once in a while. Because it's yeah. I mean, some people run it a little lighter, where it's not as heavy, but I feel like the tone and the theme is like, it's going to be... My players call it recreational anxiety. So the way that I run Strahd. So I mean, and I think that's the way it's meant to be run. If people want to run it differently, like I know I've seen someone run it as a comedy before, but that's just, I wouldn't play it. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what we're buying into, and it just the more gothic horror, yeah.
Yeah, I like a lot of what a lot of my design philosophy is trying to break down very simply. In what I'm currently writing in my textbook on ludonarrative design, codenamed the DMG Reloaded. Ultimately, D&D is a game that contains sub-games or smaller games. For example, a combat encounter or even a whole quest. And a game is nothing more than a set of stakes that can be won or lost. Save the village from the dragon. That is a set of stakes that be won or lost. Either you win and you save the village, or you lose and you don't save the village. But if you subdivide it further, you can have positive stakes. I can achieve something. I can win something and make things better. Versus negative stakes. I can survive this. I can prevent the bad thing from happening. And so the difference is, with negative stakes, you're defending the status quo. With positive stakes, you are advancing or progressing or transforming the status quo in some respect. And so negative stakes, especially in something like a survival horror game, for example, they are the bread and butter of that genre. You're constantly fighting to stay alive and survive. But even in something like, Amnesia, the example of the survival horror genre, while every individual level might be based around negative stakes, survive the monsters patrolling the hallways, the game as a whole is built around positive stakes. Now, Amnesia has kind of, ethically dicey. It's about getting vengeance and killing the guy who kind of fucked you over. But nevertheless, you are changing the status quo. You are achieving something. You may be achieving negative stakes, survival, but in pursuit of positive goals. And so it's very common with a lot of DMs. I mean, first off, especially with Gothic horror, a lot of DMs seem to think that torture equals fun. The old adage goes, "Fun is zero sum." If I'm having all the fun, then nobody else is. Which I'm sure doesn't apply to you. But
No, torture is awful. Like I
of
just
course,
can't.
yeah.
I hate role playing if NPC is being tortured. I'm just like,
Oh,
no.
I don't mean literal torture. Just
Oh,
I'm gonna kill your NPC friends and I'm gonna burn all your
oh,
belongings and
yeah.
I'm
It's
gonna
like, yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But on top of that, even games that are nothing but negative stakes, it can sometimes feel like an endless limbo where the best, paraphrasing Isaac again from Castlevania, the best you can do is survive until dawn, then do it all again. There's no hope
Hmm.
for achieving anything. And so at that point, in many players' minds, there will arise a question of what's the point of playing this game if I'll never achieve anything? I might as well not play at all. I mean, sure, there's an argument for a lot of players that enjoy kind of power building strategy, or certainly role players who enjoy exploring characters and their development through those negative stakes, that kind of crucible. Twice Bitten was certainly an example of this, but even Twice Bitten achieved positive stakes in the end in the form of freeing Barovia from Strahd's control. And even if you take that
Right.
away, the characters themselves achieved self-actualization. They went through internal arcs of growth, and even if Barovia hadn't changed and all they had done was survive, what mattered in the end was that they had become people capable of defeating Strahd. And so they had
Yeah.
undergone growth. They had achieved that positive internal stakes, and so the adventure was worth playing. The story was worth telling. It went somewhere. It wasn't just a treadmill. And
Mm.
so I find that has been a very powerful thing for me. Is why are we playing this? What does it mean? What are we really achieving? Because I know it's the bread and butter of the fantasy genre, but there are only so many stories you can tell where it's like, okay, we're going to save the world, and then it's going to go back to how it was before. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Like you've stopped the apocalypse, but like now what? And there's
And
an
that's
appeal to that. There's an apocalyptic genre for a reason. People love big budget disaster shit, and feeling like they like to stop the apocalypse. But at a certain point, you want to be a lot of players want to be able to not just stop things from getting bad, but to have a hand in making things better.
yeah, and that's the damn shame of like the decision to at the end of the raw Curse of Strahd. That's the default position, is like it returns to,
You achieve nothing. Yeah.
yeah, you achieve nothing. And it's like, okay, so I just read that for the first time as a GM. Like when I first started, I was like, that's a fucking bummer. Like
Yep.
that's like, okay, well, all right, that's gonna get changed. I'm not gonna do that.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it's stakes, having stakes and things to achieve, even if it's not like achieving or acquiring like loot. It's important to at least achieve something story wise, for sure. Huh. Let's talk about Twice Bitten.
Bring it.
How did this get started? Besides, so I generally know that most. I'll just let you say it. How
Sure.
did it get started?
So actually, in a conversation very much like this one, it
Oh.
was 2020. COVID pandemic was in the process of hitting. Everyone was cooped up inside. And a lot
Hmm.
of us were very, very active on the Curse of Strahd subreddit's community Discord. And so at one point, I or someone else kind of raised this point, and I started soapboxing, as I am unfortunately want to do, about this idea that, look, you have to ultimately achieve something in the campaign. There has to be some reason why it was worth it. And so if you want to run it entirely raw, and Strahd always comes back no matter what, and you achieve nothing in the end, that means that, like many horror stories where the monster survives and the best you can do is escape, well, that means that the story has to be about something else. It has to be about, like I said, about being the kind of person that, or becoming the kind of person that is capable of defeating Strahd, about undergoing self-actualization, the hero's journey, and returning home transformed, with the alchemist's secret, or whatever Joseph Campbell calls it. And
Hmm.
so this got the attention of a number of other DMs in the server. I had kind of half jokingly proposed, like, hey, we could just like run this as like an adventure and like test it out, see if like prove our hypothesis. Does Curse of Strahd feel more rewarding if the players self-actualize by the end, even though Strahd's going to come back? And we got a group of 5 fantastic players hopping on. They made characters. They developed these fantastic arcs with them, and they brought them to life on the stream. And we were blown away by the amount of interest and support we got from it. Like, it was really just meant to be like originally just a kind of a pet project, and people were like, "No, this is really cool. Let's do more of it." And so we like made a whole thing out of it. It was an incredible journey for like 2 years, and by the end of it, we proved our hypothesis. The final scene that I narrated was Strahd coming back, the mists rolling back in a lot of places, word for word from the module. Everything goes back to shit, and Strahd reemerges from his coffin, even though he's been killed. But here's the crazy thing: it didn't even feel bad, because the players, their characters, had even been hinted about Strahd might be coming back. Like, Esmeralda, as per the book, tells them she thinks that Strahd might not be so dead. And the players were like, we're still going to go on our epilogues. We're still going to go out of Barovia and advance our storylines and, as the new people who have undergone their character arcs and kind of live life to the fullest, like we weren't doing before. We're going to be heroes instead of cowards. We're going to live life instead of mourning it. But if Strahd comes back, taps on Sunsword, you know who to call. And like that little beat where the players are told your efforts meant nothing, but now they know if this little fucker comes back, we can beat his ass 6 ways to Sunday. Where they couldn't have done that. They were not, as a matter of personality, they were not capable of doing that, let alone statistics. That makes such a transformative difference in how the epilogue is experienced that I was just blown away by considering it when we had wrapped it up.
Your session 0 must have been amazing, because did you run a session 0?
We ran some kind of session 0, as I recall. I did a lot of the characters were all created independently. Okay. Nobody knew. In fact, as you might know from the first episode, nobody knew each other's classes. They were like, "Oh man, Metreon used this spell. He must be this class." And Jack, Metreon's player, was like, "Nope, motherfucker's wrong. I intentionally chose that to fuck with you." So I did a lot of behind the scenes work, kind of trying to encourage them, push them in different directions, kind of help coordinate without coordinating. But by far the most amount of work was done to the players. Like for session 0, like my role was kind of like helping to make sure that everyone was on the same page in terms of what themes we wanted to explore. What our lines and veils were. Certainly make sure that those safety mechanisms were in place, and certainly as the campaign goes by, you learn more things about each other, about yourselves. You have to revisit that. Session 0.5 is a thing for a reason, and certainly there were a number of times where we're like, okay, let's take another look at it, let's talk things out, because this is a very dark module. And you've got to be vigilant for the comfort of your other players in your table, and you've got to have those conversations. But overall, the session 0 was as substantive as we could make it. And the players came out of it with a fantastic group of characters that I was incredibly excited to see develop and be introduced and grow. And they proceeded to spend the next 50 odd sessions utterly smashing every scene that they came across, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of blown away though about the way that this group came together, in which, because you had that conversation prior to running the campaign, in which you put everyone on the same page and you said, this is the story. And you said, create a character that fits this story. And everyone stuck to that theme. And that's why I believe the stream, the story that you told together, was so good. It's because everybody was on the same page. And I feel like it was just well constructed in that way. And that's what I mean, like, you must have had a great session 0. That's what I mean. Because you had not necessarily player character connections to each other, but the players knew what the story was before they began. And obviously they knew the module. Many of them were GMs, I believe, right? So there's that. But the fact that they were all on the same page, I think, really lent to it. And there's something to be said about that kind of player-to-player expectation, revisiting lines and veils, and making sure that everybody is comfortable and feels safe enough to be vulnerable to tell those kinds of stories. Really incredible job from the whole team there. So I really enjoyed it.
100%.
That wasn't a question, I guess. That was just me just...
it's more of a comment than a question, actually. No, I agree.
Yeah. No, and I had Kaya on the podcast some time ago. Wonderful human.
My God, I
Um,
love Kaya. She is the best.
yeah, yeah, a little game designer in her own right. She's off doing indie stuff, and I like to check out what she's doing once in a while. But yeah, so as we're moving into like game design type discussion, I want to talk to you about uh, Adaline Publishing. I'm having trouble pronouncing stuff today. Eidolon.
Eidolon. Yep, Eidolon.
Eidolon Publishing. It's not just I don't have a hatred for Eidolons. It's I've been mispronouncing stuff all day. I don't know what it is.
I mean, I'm the one who said Stwad earlier, I think, so
Just
we'll call
what?
it even.
Yeah, tell me about how you've got to start with this. You're about to announce. It'll be announced by the time this podcast releases. So I'll have a link in the show notes for everyone to check it out. But please tell me about how this came to be and what you're doing with Eidolon Publishing.
Yeah, so it really started with Curse of Strahd Reloaded itself. I, I always knew at some point, obviously, I was going to be done with it. I mean, insofar as something that it lives on the internet and can be edited or updated at a moment's notice can be said to be complete. But I always was like, I want to do other things after this. And people kept asking me, "Hey, Dragna, what are you going to do next? Are you going to reload Tomb of Annihilation, Rhyme of the Frost Maiden? We want to see what's going to come next. Reload something else." And I was like, "Okay, I got to think about it." But also, as I was doing so, I realized two things. First, I enjoy designing adventures more than I like spending hours writing out hundreds, if not thousands, of words of scene-by-scene flavor text, dialogue, and mechanics. It's important work. I love the finished product. I like to call myself someone who loves having created more than the creating. But I didn't want to devote another 7 years of my life to a single Wizard of the Coast module. And certainly beyond that, I didn't feel like that would be enough. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion, like, look, I want to keep doing this kind of thing. I think it's important work that's really demand for, if the support for the Patreon and Reloaded itself has shown me anything. But I don't think I can do it alone. So last summer, I started floating the idea to my Patreon server, kind of asking if anyone had interest in supporting the work and kind of helping to become writers under me in whatever this new venture would be. I hadn't named it yet. And two members of my Patreon, Shmammy and Winsock. Shmammy is now our operations manager and one of our staff writers. Winsock is our finance manager and another one of our staff writers, two fantastic folks. They hopped onto the team, and we started exploring and trying to figure out what this would be. We initially kind of tried to do an experimental one-shot folk horror homebrew Kickstarter that completely fell on its face. We'd never even launched because we were a week out, and because I'd never managed a team or a project before, let alone done a Kickstarter. Realized with approximately 3 days to go, hey guys, we don't have a bank account. This might be a problem. And so we canceled that. We kept trying to figure out what we were doing. And eventually, sometime in November, December 2024, we sit down and I'm like, okay, look, two things. First, we need to finalize a name. We hadn't done so yet. So I guess three things. Secondly, people want reloaded stuff. Let's keep reloading stuff. Keep delivering what that core initial mission was, and see how far we can push it. And thirdly, let's grow the team, because 3 of us is great, but more of us would be better. And since when we brought in a fantastic team of folks, help with marketing, community building, business development, everything you could ask for. And we're still continuing to grow. We're bringing on our web team right now to build a digital platform to host our adventures. We're bringing on more writers and game designers, and growing as hungrily as we can, with an ultimate goal of continuing, not just continuing, but perfecting the work that Reloaded started. Because something that I kept telling people that kept surprising them, I guess, when I was interviewing for these positions for Eidolon, which by December or so we had actually named it Eidolon, was that I consider Curse of Strahd Reloaded to be an incredibly rough prototype of what Reloaded modules should be. People seem to love it. Like, I am flattered and honored that so many people run my adventures, but I put a lot of work into the characters, into the narrative, into the game design, the balancing, the cohesion, the thoroughness of the work. But it is incredibly flawed in a lot of major respects. The way that it's presented and the way that it's framed makes it seem more like a script than a session planning sheet. It is incredibly dense and doesn't do a whole lot to scaffold the DM at a glance, kind of trying to get a mental framework in the head. You've got to kind of read the thing to find out what's in it, which is admittedly more than what some other official modules that I shall not name do, where you don't, or even reading it doesn't tell you what's in it. But it's also very resistant to changes. I mean, if you thought Rules of Raw Crystal Shroud was easy to break, take a look at Reloaded. My God, load-bearing pillars everywhere, and the guide doesn't tell you where they are or how to work around them. The number of times where I have someone come into my Discord server and they're like, Dragna, I transitioned over from Raw to Reloaded like halfway through WotC, and as a result, my entire campaign broke. What do I do? And so I felt crappy about that. Like it should have been easier to mod and work around. And it was very reliant on this kind of, as a whole, many of the individual arcs or quest lines, the acts as a whole are very kind of flexilinear or sandbox. Like WotC, you can do a lot, you can pick and choose between a lot of different things, but each individual arc, like the Bones, is kind of a linear, go here, do this thing, go here, do that thing. And I try to use what I've learned in game design to make those open-ended problems. Kind of the players have to figure out how to solve, how do you deal with Milivoy? How do you deal with Valenta? How do you deal with the heist of Ravenloft? So like within that confined space, they're very open-ended, but at the broader narrative level, it's still very confined and linear. You're kind of just going through the steps along the way. And so that I consider to be another major flaw of Reloaded, where a lot of DMs are very grateful for the narrative structure that it provided, but it swung too hard in the other direction. And now it was too fragile instead of being too underbaked. And so, what I want to do differently with the Eidolon is, first off, address these mistakes. I want to make it even easier to run, even more accessible to DM, so they can just grab it and go with 5 minutes notice without need to read the damn thing to find out what's in it. They can just easily pick it up. But also on converse side, if you're a DM who wants to make it your own and tell your own story using the skeleton that these Reloaded modules give you, that you can spend 6 hours doing so, and it'll help you do so. It won't fight you like Reloaded does. To quote one of my lovely patrons, I have never seen a campaign fight so hard against being changed as Reloaded. And I do not consider that a compliment. I consider that a shameful failing of the guide, which, I don't know if I would have had the time over the past few years to do it differently, and I've learned a lot in the process, but I want to do it differently moving forward. And that's a lot of what I want Eidolon to be, where it helps you tell the story you want to tell instead of fighting you for it. And really helping you promote that serendipity of telling a story that means a lot to your table instead of just a story that means a lot to the guy who wrote it at his computer somewhere who's never met your players. So,
Right.
On top of that, I want to be more ambitious with the actual preparatory side of it. In a lot of our surveys of Reloaded's readers, beyond just kind of reading the material, prepping the notes, a lot of people spend a lot of time getting soundtracks together, battle maps, artwork. And so a lot of what we want to achieve with our products is try to make them as all in the box as we possibly can. Our funding model for the work that we're going to do, we're starting with Lost Mine of Fendelver Reloaded. It's the most accessible model. We're kind of a fledgling company. We want to prove ourselves before we're tackling something larger. Although larger ones are certainly in the works. I would love to tackle like Rime of the Frost Maiden, Descent to Inverness, something like
Hell
that.
yeah.
But insofar as the Kickstarter model, what we'd like to do with it is the base goal at the lowest cost is just the text itself, like Curse of Strahd Reloaded is. Now, Curse of Strahd Reloaded has artwork and battle maps in it, very generously donated by the incredible artist Caleb Cleveland and the incredible map maker, cartographer DM Andy, who do fantastic work. I heavily recommend checking them out. But I did not do any of that myself, and Caleb and Andy work at their own paces. And kind of, understandably kind of do what interests them and what their needs are. Whereas for what I want Eidolon to be is the second you open it up, and again, Caleb and Andy have done a lot of work. Caleb has done an insane amount of art pieces that he's contributed to Reloaded. So, like, don't take this as me saying that he hasn't done enough. My God, that man is a machine. But for Eidolon, my dream is, obviously people get to watch the development process. Like for Curse of Strahd Reloaded, you get updates, you get previews, you get to see things, you get to kind of use the playtest material before the whole thing is complete. And we release it publicly whenever we have a new package ready to go. But by the end of it, by the end that we finish delivering anything, someone who just clicks to, Lost Mine of Fendelver Reloaded.com or whatever the heck web host we wind up putting it on our website, it comes with a ready-made battle maps for every scene, tokens, artwork for every monster, every location, ideally, I mean, it's an ambitious stretch goal and like it's up there. But if we can afford it, a full soundtrack, every single scene, no more scrounging YouTube or Spotify for random Skyrim playlists. As much as I love my Skyrim playlists, um, uh, just a fully curated experience that all but runs it for you. So you don't have to like you can spend the time if you want to, but if you don't, all you need to do is sit down at the table, pull it up, and have fun with your friends for 3 to 4 hours. That's what we want to deliver. That's what we want to make possible. Because our ultimate dream with Eidolon is a future where, and this might sound corny, but I dream of a future where the DM shortage is over. Because there are more DMs than players, because DMs is just that fun and satisfying and easy and accessible. And, you know, that's a future that I want Eidolon to make happen. Where DMing is just so easy, so unintimidating, so intuitive and hand-holding and friendly and meaningful that anyone can do it.
That's a lot of work. So I have some experience writing adventures, and it was challenging for me to craft an adventure that was accessible yet had enough juice to really engage people in a way that wasn't just combat for like a 1 or 2 shot adventure. And what I found was that I was first crafting the main story. Like, this is what you need to do. Here's the things that will break it. And I clearly indicate in the adventure, like, if you do this thing or they don't do this other thing, then it'll break the adventure. Like, you have to go in a certain order for some of the rooms for it to make sense. Or you need to move that encounter to a different room. But yeah, it can be very difficult to write for everyone, for sure. And it makes me sort of reinforce the fact that as much as I can criticize sometimes the vanilla direction of the Wizards of the Coast adventures, I understand why they do it, because they are trying to strip it down to everything that was stress tested for every single table. That is not to say that they don't miss load-bearing pillars that are, you know what I mean, that are very important, or they miss providing motivation for the things that happen later in the story. Is one of the most egregious things that Wizards modules do, is like they provide neat little things at the end of the adventure that you have no context for, that you need to put in the beginning of your adventure, so on and so forth, but and connect everything. But yeah, that's a lot. I ended up writing just a bunch of additional options for people to use to take the story in the direction that they wanted. And I made sure that the ending of the adventure had 2 or 3 possible endings built in. And then people can, if they need to, they'll call an audible and they'll change it from there. But providing those options was, I think, pretty important to people's experience. I got good feedback for it. I don't know. That's been my kind of vision for those crafting adventures anyway. But murder mysteries are hard, man. Like, there's so much intrigue is just hard to do, as you know.
Yeah, I've been taking a keen interest in this kind of thing lately. With the DMG Reloaded game design and narrative design textbook, I've kind of been iterating and circling around a lot of theoretical framework for the past 1.5 to 2 years, because fundamentally a lot of what interests me is how designing these experiences works at a fundamental level.
Right.
Like searching for that theory of everything. It sounds a little bit silly when applied to TTRPGs, but like sincerely, like I believe that the art of ludonarrative meaning the intersection of narrative and gameplay, that ludonarrative design is at a pre-paradigmatic field. Like, we don't understand really how it works or the basic fundamentals. I believe very firmly in ABCs before, walking before you can run and so on. And so, in this particular context, right, it helps to me to start by defining a few terms. Because when you start with D&D, as mentioned, it's a tabletop role-playing game. And what is a game? A game is a set of stakes that could be won or lost. And so this leads to a follow-up question. What does it mean to win or lose a game? And so you can kind of break games down into a few different areas. What allows you to win the game? First, you've got games of chance. This might be anywhere from slots to skill checks, rolling to hit. Whether you win or lose is out of your hands entirely. Certainly in D&D, there's like a character building aspect that kind of preloads everything, kind of, but when you're sitting at the table, it's a game of chance. You have no input into whether or not you succeed. The second kind of game is what I like to call a game of strategy. You can kind of maybe call it also a game of creativity. Creative strategizing is an aspect of that. But this is, very much of kind of taking inspiration originally. A big idol of mine, the one who first inspired me on kind of this theoretical journey, the Alexandrian, which I think you're familiar with. You might have mentioned. Prep situations, not plots. Well, what does that mean? And so, with games of skill, what I like to call problem games. There is a problem. It's your job to solve it. I don't care how, just do it. The players have to win by figuring out a strategy that is capable of succeeding. The example of this is an environmental puzzle. Get across the chasm. You can fly, you can grapple hook, you can climb down and climb back up, you can go around if you're able to do so. How do you get across the chasm? I don't care. Figure it out. It's your problem. Solve it. Open-ended. Games of strategy. And then the third one is what I call question games, games of logic, games of reasoning. A question being, this is a question. This game is a question that has an answer. Find the answer. Puzzles, riddles, math puzzles, mysteries. Very often intrigue falls into this. Who was the murderer? That's a question game. You must find the answer. And there is only one answer, and it's in the DM's head. So naturally, the DM has to drop lots of clues so that the players can deduct or induct or kind of make a educated hypothesis about what that answer is. But it's very much a process of logical reasoning and deduction, which can be very difficult because the DM has to make the active choice. I mean, the Alexandrian has explored this a little bit with the 3-clue rule, the idea being that every, mystery has to have 3 clues at least for each aspect. But I would go even further and say that the difficulty of a question game, this kind of logical reasoning, solve the puzzle, find the answer game, is inversely proportional to the number of clues that the DM gives. I don't give 3 clues in my mysteries. I give 15. And every single one of them, as closely as possible, leads the players toward an inevitable certain conclusion. For example, in Curse of Strahd Reloaded, the way that I have it set up in Reloaded, certainly in Raw you have the Sun Sword, the weapon capable of conjuring sunlight and defeating Strahd with it. And in Reloaded, I hide it in the amber sarcophagus of the vampire, the dark vestige, the amber vestige that gave Strahd his gift of vampirism. It's hidden away, tucked away in a secret demiplane that is, vampire is a little like mental mind space demiplane. It's like a black dead tree with vampire like resting on it as a snake, and there's like a canal of blood around it, around the edges of this mental space. And the secret is that you have to swim through the blood, come out the other side, and you find an inverted, mirrored, flipped version of the chamber you were just in, but where Vampire's tree was is now a plinth holding the Sun Sword. It was hidden away there, in a place where Strahd would never think to go, in the one place where he would never look. And so you have to convey this to the players, because there's one right answer. It's a question. Where's the Sun Sword? The answer is, it's under that canal of blood. And so you have to plant clues throughout the area. For example, there is a Nothic that the players can befriend or, kind of talk with in the Amber Temple that I've kind of tweaked. And she gives you a riddle, kind of a little easy riddle. It's kind of like, guess the backstory of what the dark powers are. Although it's harder than you'd think. A lot of players can't figure out the difference between the dark powers and the Amber vestiges. But if you answer her riddle, she tells you, oh, the thing you seek lies beneath great volumes is drowned in blood. And the players are like, there's a bloody canal in there. Maybe it's in there. And so they swim down and they check it out. And that's one tiny thing. There's like 7 other clues scattered around the temple that all point in that direction, many of which are redundant, but that the more you get, the more they inevitably lead toward that one conclusion. The Sun Sword must be here. And again, many of those clues are redundant. And so, functionally speaking, when I'm designing an adventure at this point, I start by designing the game. At the top level, think of Curse of Strahd. Even the rules as written version, not even a Reloaded. What is the game at a top level of the campaign? Well, what are the stakes that can be won or lost? At a base level, the stakes that can be won or lost are the player's freedom. Well, is it a game of chance? Is it a game of strategy? Or is it a game of reasoning? Is there one right way to escape? No, you can, there are, I can, the players will probably have to kill Straw, but there's no reason why they have to. They might figure out some other way of doing it. Maybe they convince Strahd to let them go in exchange for, giving him Irina, or like for giving, the fighter says, free me and I'll give you the wizard, or something like that. And certainly a lot of DMs enjoy, letting their players make themselves the Dark Lords of Barovia to replace Strahd. There are other win conditions. But at its core, Escape Barovia is a problem game. It is a problem. I don't care how you figure it out, just solve it. And most of the time, players are going to do so by killing Strahd. But very often, they might try to do so in other ways, especially if the DM encourages that kind of gameplay. And so, once you have that, you might go down another level. Like, okay, how can they kill Strahd? If they decide to win the game by doing so, well, there are these 3 Taroka items that Madame Ava tells you about. Okay, how do we get them? Funny you should ask. The Sun Sword lies in the Amber Temple. Well, first you got to figure that out. That's a question game. Where's the Sun Sword? Decode the prophecy. You're like, oh, it's in the Amber Temple. Where's the Amber Temple? Guess what? Second question game. Go find that out. Go figure it out. Find out who knows and get them to tell you. Okay, now we got to get there. Well, it's a problem game. How do we get to the Amber Temple? Figure it out. I don't care. And so it just unfolds where at every level you keep going down and there's more games. And understanding the ways in which the players can apply either skill, chance, or logical reasoning helps you to craft that gameplay experience in a way that allows the players to really dictate their own fates and engage with D&D in this unique way that no other game can be. I mean, certainly, any game can be a game of chance. Anyone who's played WotC can tell you that. Any game can be a game of reasoning. Anyone who's played Sudoku can tell you that. But only certain games can be strategic games. I mean, most games are. Video games, certainly. If you look at chess, Go, anything like that, strategy is very common. But D&D takes it one step further in that the possible strategies are unlimited. Anything you can imagine that has a reasonable chance of success, you can try. And that, in my mind, is why D&D or TTRPGs in general are some of the best and most important games ever crafted, because there is no limit to the number of strategies or kinds of strategies that you can create. If you can imagine it, you can make it so. And that's what keeps us coming back, at least in my mind. So, wow, that was a long soapbox, but hopefully that you found that illuminating, if not at least entertaining.
Yeah, I forgot what I asked. That was just along for the ride, really. I'll listen back and be like, oh, that's how we got there. Okay. No, that's perfect. That's the type of podcast I love to have, honestly. But I'm curious about some. Have you run it since Twice Bitten? Have you been running Strahd at all?
No, Twice Bitten was the third and thus far final time I've run it. I may sometime in the future run Reloaded, but I have no immediate plans to do so. Certainly people have asked me many times, are you going to do Twice Bitten again, but do Reloaded this time? And every time I'm like, I appreciate the interest, but it's not currently in the cards.
I feel like that would be difficult to do, too, after you just run. And the whole production aspect of it as well is like, that's a whole nother... Yeah. It takes a lot out of you, So I get that. Tell me about your Patreon. As far as what you're hoping to offer people who follow you on Patreon, and toss $5 at you. What is it that you're offering young and old GMs alike, that you think is valuable to them?
Yeah, so it's actually been a lot of fun. I've done a lot of experimenting with it over the years, especially at the start. I was constantly changing like what Patreon perks. I was like, do people want this? Do people want this? I don't know. I mean, originally, I have a bronze tier, a silver tier, and a gold tier. And generally, the way it's worked is that bronze gets sneak previews of my drafts, as well as some kind of stuff that I provide for like general DMing skills. Silver gets something that has been constantly in flux and eventually settled. And then gold gets campaign advice on demand in my Patreon Discord server. If they have a problem, I come help it. And then if I have tiers above that, I've got platinum, which is monthly mentoring sessions, and I've got diamond, which is weekly session prep. But they're kind of a tier above the others in terms of cost. But so focusing on those lower three, with the drafts speak for themselves, and certainly my patrons have been an invaluable resource to me. Honestly, I wonder if I should be paying them. Like without them, Curse of Strahd Reloaded would not be half of what it is. Their feedback, their critique, their thoughts. I could not thank them more. It's an incredible community, and every day I'm grateful for it. But beyond that, what I like to do with that is kind of exploring, these ideas of DMing skills, of game design, of narrative design, and helping teach DMs to improve. And certainly I found that by doing so, I've made my skills even better, to learn, teach. It started out originally as doing monthly streamed workshops over the Discord, recording the VODs and posting them, focusing on different DMing skills like how do I get my players to roleplay? How do I run scary villains? How do I make combat not incredibly slow? And on the way, kind of sharing, sort of the little reference sheets that I made about how to make boss monsters, how to balance combats, how to do voices, how to make NPCs, that sort of thing. And then eventually, as I kind of, tapered away from the workshops and I started exploring the DMG Reloaded, I started sharing the draft chapters there. So exploring concepts of, how and why do you make NPCs likable or unlikable? What is a tension curve and why do we care? How do we create catharsis in our adventures? What are games and what the heck do we do with them? And kind of trying to develop this theoretical framework to really break down how games and how TTRPGs work, and sharing with them. And they've been very receptive and helpful in kind of exploring those ideas as I try to present them. At the silver level, it originally started, I was like, people like homebrew stuff, right? I'll write homebrew stuff. And I wrote like these little packs of like, here's the Cosmic Horror pack, here's the Gothic Horror Vampire pack. And people were like, okay, this is cool. Don't really care though. Well, no, I'm sure some people like that. I know a lot of people like them. But like, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to interrupt and just talk about what popped into my head. Like after I've known you for all of an hour and a half now. And it strikes me that perhaps the thing that, not that you don't have enough to do, but I feel like what you're doing is you're working up to becoming a video essayist on YouTube.
Oh,
with
God.
these theoretical papers and things like that. Because I'm a big video essayist consumer, but that's how it starts. I just wanted to comment. I'm just letting you know that's how it starts.
Oh boy! I mean, I will confess, when I posted the final chapter of Curse of Strahd Reloaded on my Patreon on Friday, I said I'll give you a roadmap of what's to come, and in that roadmap that I posted this past Sunday, number 7 or 8 was, I'm going back to YouTube, kids, pack it up, let's go. I mean, I do not have the time to do what the big video essayists do. I respect the hell out of them. The best I can hope for is getting a crappy little digital tablet and just kind of bullshitting my way through some kind of Khan Academy whiteboard style analysis. I'm good at drawing diagrams, very poor ones, and kind of lecturing as I do. So I'd like to explore that space, but I don't know if I could hope to do like the big video essayist thing. Though you never know what the future might bring. I have many thoughts, and certainly, I don't know about the video part, but in terms of essays, I have a Substack, Dragna's Den Substack, and I've written a few articles on there. It's where the Challenge Ratings 2.0 system started. When I started making it my mission to prove that D&D combat is actually fair and balanced, and wound up accidentally proving the opposite, which sent me to another rabbit hole for 3 months. But like, I want to get back into blogging and posting things and sharing hot takes and exploring ideas and reviews and posting things there. So all that to say is that, by God, I will not shut up, and I will subject anyone who's willing to listen to me and more to any ideas that I can manage.
No, I think you could take especially if you don't want to do the whole get on camera, set up a set and everything. You could probably do it very I guess low cost. It would probably still cost you. I don't know if you're an artist yourself, but you could probably just pay a bunch of upfront to create a little guy that you put on.
I will. It's funny you should say so. My marketing and community managers on Eidolon have informed me that they intend to have me appear in Eidolon Publishing's YouTube channel, to do little reviews or tips videos. And they have informed me, not asked, they have informed me that I will be receiving a little dragon PNG tuber.
There you go.
Which
that's perfect for you, because all you got to do is get on mic and record your thoughts, and then they'll do all the other stuff, and that's the perfect role for you.
Absolutely, I love them. They've got fantastic ideas. They're a great team. So I mean, YouTube's not currently on our priority list for Eidolon, just because my God, there's so much else to do in running and
Right.
launching a Kickstarter. But we
Hmm.
we aggressively want to get to YouTube. So that's another tangent. We're very good at finding those, or at least I am. But
No, no,
um,
you just talk about all the stuff that I want to talk about. So if we're like kind of verging onto your Kickstarter, and you have mentioned it. I wanna get I want to get like the bones, the at least the meat of what it is that you're doing with your Kickstarter. You mentioned it was a Lost Mine Fandelver Reloaded Kickstarter. Can you tell me more about that and where you're at now, what you're planning to do with it, and like all of that stuff?
yeah. So where we're at right now is we're just trying to slowly just build our mailing list for that, especially now that we've launched. I guess I'm speaking in the past future tense, given that I'm
Uh-huh.
recording this the
Yeah.
night before we launch, but we'll have launched by the time people are hearing this.
Yeah.
Trying to let people know, hey, come sign up for this, come join the waiting list. I've been told it's we've learned that it's the best practice to try to help let people reserve their slots, really build up interest, kind of build up kind of a VIP reservation list to help people feel excited about backing on launch day, hitting that goal as quickly as you can. And beyond that, we're actively building the team to get finalize the writing team. We're bringing on the game designers, getting all the materials together. Insofar as the product itself, at its core, it is aims to do similarly to what Curse of Strahd Reloaded did to Curse of Strahd, but the same for Phandelver. And funnily enough, we're actually doing an East Marches rotating DM campaign right now internally at Eidolon, where we're running through the adventure exactly as it's written on the page. You're not allowed to improvise. You're not allowed to riff. You're not allowed to change anything. You have to do exactly what Wizards tells you and nothing else, and it is excruciating. But we after every single game, we debrief and we take lengthy notes on everything like that did or did not work or what we want to see, and so that's all going into the file. Um,
That
for
sounds excruciating because then do you find that players roleplay a lot less in situations? I feel like it would because at some point the GM's just like, this is what it says. Like, do
there, there,
this.
there, there is a particular scene that sticks out to me. It's at the Stone Hill Inn in Fandolin. First off, there's no description for the exterior. Just you go in and then immediately it reads off the taproom description. There are a number of people here that you can talk to and get information from, but they each only have one line of dialogue, no backstory,
Oh my
and they are not
God.
described in the flavor text. So
Oh
it's
my
the kind of
God.
the equivalent of the old "Welcome to Corneria" meme. Like, hey, what's up with you? I heard that there are bandits in those hills. Okay, what about them? I heard there are bandits in those hills. And like, you can very clearly see like, you know, they're they're expecting DMs to do a lot of the work. And like, I don't like.
Right.
There's a page count limit certainly, which is a paper publishing company foremost historically. So there are restrictions on what they can do. If you printed out Curse of Strahd Reloaded, it would fill 4 volumes or more the size of Curse of Strahd. Literally, it's as of our last count, it's 430,000 words to Curse of Strahd's 150,000, I think.
Hmm.
So like, it's not a small volume by any stretch. But the joke of the scene is like, there are these people here. We're just going to talk to them, and they're going to repeat their stupid lines at us, and there's nothing else to find out here because there's nothing written down.
Damn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, so we've been going on that roller coaster. It's been a fun time. People moan and complain every time they finish a session, but we get lots of good data out of it. But insofar as,
Yeah.
again, sorry, the product itself, again
Uh-huh.
sidetracked.
Yeah. The
Apologies.
Kickstarter. Focus.
Yes. So the core product aims to do what Curse of Strahd Reloaded did for Curse of Strahd, which is make it playable out of the box, narratively satisfying, player-driven, balanced, meaningful, strategic, tactical gameplay that doesn't just come down to I love my click clack math dice goblins. I adore them. I respect them. But there's more to life than rolling click clack math rocks. I know. I'm sorry. Someone has to say it. And part of that comes down to introducing, the kind of open-ended problem question game or problem game gameplay that I think a lot of D&D players live for. The heist, the planning, all that good stuff that lets players really flex and shine with their creativity and come up with solutions on their own. But beyond that, kind of making it a cohesive story thematically, making it tell a story that doesn't kind of peter out and Wayback Cave with no meaningful climax to speak of or no meaningful payoff to speak of. Centering the villain and the characters more. Again, remember, stories are about people, not plots, so we need the people to be
Absolutely.
focused and not the plot.
Hmm.
as well as doing all the things that I talked about before, bringing forward, making sure that we, um, if we can afford it at least, because the way the Kickstarter is set out again is at the base level there is the adventure. If we fully fund, we get the words. For each successive stretch goal, you get the battle maps, or you get the character illustrations, or you get a printable PDF and a VTT module, or you get location artwork, or you get an original soundtrack. And so we want to hit all these stretch goals, ideally. The way that it's structured, of course, both due to the fan content policy, A, and B, because Curse of Strahd Reloaded started as a free, community-accessible product, and I'm not changing that now, is that we're going to release the whole of Lost Mine of Phandelver Reloaded for free to the community. We have no intention of paywalling it. We couldn't even if we wanted to, but again, we don't want to. We want people to run it. We want people to play it. That's part of our mission. So a lot of it's going to depend on a lot of the fundraising support that we can gather from people, helping to bring this about. Because without their support, it won't have battle maps. Without their support, it won't have a soundtrack or character illustrations or a plug-and-play VTT module. And to that extent, to help thank our backers, we're going to be offering a number of additional perks. We're still in the process of finalizing kind of price points and some details, but I'm certainly anticipating that we might offer in the way of original compatible one-shot adventures or tactical bestiary that kind of supplements the monster manual, or original new player friendly character sheets or cheat sheets, additional mentoring sessions, anything like that we can do to offer exclusive benefits to thank people for signing up to join and support our work. Certainly one thing that we're doing as well is people who pledge $1 before the Kickstarter launches, to quote unquote reserve their spots. If they support the Kickstarter on day one, on the launch day, they get what we're calling the Green Dragon Adventure Pack, a one-shot adventure that's about an adult Green Dragon villain, 10th level adventure probably. You get original tactical stat blocks for young, adult, and ancient dragons. You get original magic item. You get an original battle map, original dragon illustration. Because we want to reward people for supporting us and coming in the gates early and making this possible. Because we fundamentally believe in a model of D&D that is built by and for the community. Like I said, that's where this was born, in the garden that is and was the Curse of Strahd subreddit community and beyond that. And we want to keep that going and keep paying it forward. And we believe that by bringing everyone together to support these projects, we can make that possible.
Hey, it's me, Friday. I'm trying to fill some of my games. If you'd like to play with me, maybe Curse of Strahd or Rime and the Frost Maiden if you're into 5e. I also have a Vineyard game on Saturdays. And that's not all. I also have a vampire game and some Daggerheart games. So you should check out my profile. It's in the show notes if you want to play with me. Thanks.